Hello everybody, this is Havoc, and today we're looking at Chronicles Medieval, one of the hottest upcoming medieval sandbox games. Combining Bannerlord, Total War, and Crusader Kings into an already incredible looking title, I'm going to dive into their latest developer video and Steam post on army progression, focusing on three key elements of how your armies function in the game, with identity and composition, recruitment economy, and strategic progression. Don't forget to show your support by giving the video a like, sub, and a comment down below, and let's dive in, starting with historical unit composition. Your units in Chronicle Medieval try to stick to historical influences as much as possible, and in terms of composition, follow more along Total War's standards here, with a unit comprised of a single group of same type troops that all share the same morale, status such as health, cohesion, damage output, armor, and level progression. What's interesting here are the details of penetration, attack, block chance, and cohesion. Penetration is the ability of a unit's weapon to bypass enemy armor, and will no doubt be affected by the weapon type, where, like a knight's lance, would have a much higher penetration than a levy's sword. We've seen this in games like Total War for sure, but also in more tactical games like Battle Brothers. Attack and block chance are the probabilities that the unit's next action will be either attack or block. Of course, that does lead me to wonder what happens when neither block or attack happens. I assume it would just result in a hit by the enemy, which then has its own chance of doing damage to its armor or bypassing it with its own penetration value. Cohesion is the last, and it represents the trust and support that a soldier has in their fellow men. This, of course, means that levy troops have much less cohesion and are spread further apart than the trained household units, who know that fighting close means a greater chance of survival. These units all fall into 9 tiers of progression, one of 3 troop categories and one of 3 specialties, with the 3 available factions each having their own specialty strengths. The 3 troop categories are levies, households, and mercenaries. Levies are your everyday peasants called into service, cheap to field, lightly armored, and as such represent tiers 1 through 5, still able to pack a serious punch at their highest. Household units are the standard best, representing the nobility's own supplied men. They're armored, they're well trained, albeit more expensive to upkeep than levies. They start at tier 4, depending on troop type, can progress all the way to level 9, immediately packing more punch than 95% of your levies right off the bat. Lastly, mercenaries. These are your mid-range units, tiers 3 through 7, expensive as heck to maintain, and that's because they aren't traditionally loyal to the faction they're serving, and their primary role is to plug up weaknesses in the army they serve in. What weaknesses? Units are divided into 3 types: ranged, cavalry, and infantry, with England specializing in archers, France in cavalry, and the HRE in infantry, again appealing to more historical strengths for gameplay's sake. This means that yes, each faction will have its own overpowered area of expertise, but as we can see with this Bill Sergeant unit, there's still the opportunity to leverage all 3 types into any faction, just perhaps not to certain tiers in each troop type. This also means that mercenaries are faction specific. An HRE army would do well to hire some English mercenary archers or some French knights, with France looking to hire HRE mercenary polearms to supplement their lack of a sturdy infantry. This is a classic rock, paper, scissors approach to historical combat, and between unit types and progression systems, it's honestly reminded me more of how Total War Arena operated, if you're old enough to remember that gem of a game. The fact that we can upgrade our mercenaries is also an interesting approach, as they're already an incredible, expensive investment, and traditionally would not have had so much focus on investing in their well-being from an enlisted army. Now, Chronicle Medieval goes much more in-depth with its units, leaning heavily into its interaction with the world map, which is a great time to get into Recruitment Economy. The world map is a living, breathing place, and the recruitment economy is one of the biggest indicators of that system. Recruitment and replenishment happen on the map itself at a quartermaster's office. Levies are recruited in settlements, household units only recruited at castles, with the size of the settlement actually affecting the potential starting tier of units on recruitment. Now, to me, one of the best features of units and armies is that you do not recruit an entire unit at full strength. And this is due to one factor we'll address in the next section, but also the fact that you're not the only general recruiting and replenishing units on the map. As such, you may come up against a settlement that a rival general just replenished his troops with, leaving you with limited or no options to fill your own ranks in that particular place. Settlements and castles do reset at the start of each week, so plan accordingly, but equally as important to actual men that are recruited are the resources to recruit and replenish them. Each unit category has its own troop resources required to replenish, these being arms, armor, and horses, available in certain locations similar to the units recruited, so that you can find them easily. So to replenish the knights, you'll most likely need all three resources, making them a much more costly investment again than say some, tier 3 levies. This also means that resource management on top of unit upkeep will be required to understand how, where, and when you're going to recoup from a rough battle, or even decide to expand your army and begin exerting your influence. The cherry on top of all of this is strategic progression. This is where it all comes together in some brilliantly tactical ways. First, progression. To develop any unit along its progression tree, you'll need experience, primarily gained through active combat in battles, with more XP gained for troops killed than those sitting on the sidelines not doing anything. Earn enough XP, progress through the tree. Promotion itself requires resources depending on the unit category, the unit type and tier, exponentially growing in upgrade and upkeep costs as they progress deeper into their own trees. It also has the opportunity to unlock new formations, upgrade their weapons and armor as they become an entirely new unit, and increase their stats to make them much more effective. Army growth is one of my favorite elements of this game so far. When you're just starting out, unit slots for recruitment are small, and unit sizes are equally small. On top of that, some units, such as mercenaries, may just flat out refuse to fight for you since you don't have enough renown, and the upkeep would probably break you anyways. This means you're going to be stuck with something like 2 20-man levy units at the start, maybe a household unit willing to fight for you. As you progress, however, in said renown, for instance, you can expand the number of whole units fighting for you and the size. Mid-game may see you with a solid mix of levies, household, and mercenaries at 50 to 70 men each, while the late game, if you play your cards right, should be mostly household units, with the potential to have 100 men in each unit, with upwards of 1,000 men total in your army, if you can afford them. This is one of the clearest forms of progression that a game of this scale can represent, and I'm all for it. The last piece I wanted to touch on with progression is morale. Morale isn't something that just happens on the battlefield. It's just as important to keep morale high on the map, mainly by providing your units with food and coin. Run out of those, morale will drop, and you may have deserters, or a battle becomes significantly more difficult to win because morale just isn't as high. So, as your army gets steadily larger, or more refined and upgraded, the more economic you're going to have to be to keep morale high, your men fed and paid, potentially driving your choices more heavily on the map, and even forcing your hand to take on some battles for resources or a boost in said morale with a victory. There is a lot going on in your armies in Chronicle Medieval, and it means that the team has seen other systems from games like Bannerlord and Total War, and decided to dig deeper and bring more impact to a game of this scale, which I am very glad to see. So, let me know what most excites you from this late of dev diary by leaving a comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, show your support by giving it a like and subbing to the channel. Doing all of these will help shoot this video into the YouTube algorithm and help the channel out immensely. Thank you so much for watching. This is Havoc, and I will see you in the next one.